Dominick Cruz is making his return to the octagon against Casey Kenney, of all people, March 30th, UFC 259. Drake, what do you think about this matchup?
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about surprises, because we just talked about Yoel Romero for a separate clip here. In terms of the surprises of last week, I mean, this matchup is arguably more surprising, at least for me, who shamelessly will admit that I'm a huge Dominic Cruz stan. Yeah, it was a big shock to see this be Dominic's opponent. And I mean, just to see a Dominic Cruz announcement is always kind of shocking. I will also admit, which it makes me very happy to see one, but also is always shocking just because it's so unpredictable these days, unfortunately. And this one's far out, which is always scary, which I also hate to admit. But yeah, in terms of a straight up matchup, stylistically and everything, yeah, it's definitely interesting in many ways. It is a massive opportunity for one Casey Kenney. For Dominic, it's more of like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna try and rebound and work my way back up now, I guess, even though I'm the GOAT of the division. Like, it's very weird that he would take it, but also I understand it kind of shows to me that he feels like he's in a position now where he needs to prove himself again, that he can kind of still do this with a younger guy, obviously, and somebody who's coming up, even though they're not yet established. Like Kenny's not even in the top 15. So yeah, from that straight up matchmaking point of view, it's a little bit weird. And people will be like, "Oh, Cruz hasn't won a fight since 2016." Like, true, he's been out with injuries and everything, but it's still Dominic Cruz and somebody who is still one of the best bantamweights. Maybe he's not the best anymore. Oh, my heart. But he's definitely still capable of beating a lot of people, I believe. And I mean, you know, of course he lost to Cejudo and everything, but I still don't think he looked as bad as a lot of people thought. I don't think ring rust affects him. He's proven that enough times, and I think that the last fight still does prove that. But in terms of that, I think he should be fine. But yeah, it's a very just overall intriguing, thing that is been made, right? So I mean, what are your thoughts, man? I would love to hear what you think about it.
So my initial thought on this is, and I could very well be wrong, but especially based on him fighting Kenny, who stylistically, again, I like the matchup a lot. But as you mentioned, he's not even ranked in the top 15. He's had several wins. He's lost to Davishvili, Marab earlier this year, at the beginning of his 2020 campaign. He's rebounded with 3 straight wins. He's looking good, but my initial thoughts here and my gut reaction is that this might be a retirement fight for him if he wins, simply because he's dealt with all these injuries for so long. It's been such a struggle for him to be healthy enough to step into the cage. Last time out, I agree he didn't look that bad against Cejudo, not nearly as bad as a lot of people thought. Against Garbrandt, he got soundly outclassed, right? I mean, that's just that one of those fights where Garbrandt kind of put on a clinic. But overall, it's one of those things where his body clearly isn't allowing him to compete at the frequency or the level that he wants. He's got a commentating gig now that he's secure in, right? If they were going to let him go from commentary, they would have a while ago. I think this might be a fight for him where it's either a big rebound, like you said, in which case it's very high risk, low reward, because if he loses to Kenny, then he's, that just takes him way out of any title contention. Or this is a kind of like, I want to get in there again. I want to fight. And maybe if I win at the end of it, I go out with a win on top. And that's, I don't know. Cruz also strikes me as the type of person that wouldn't necessarily say like, hey, this is going to be my retirement fight. For me, especially with some of the interviews he's done, I think this could secretly be in the back of his mind, like, yeah, if I win this, I might hang him up. But I don't think he's going to go out there and make a big show of it and say like, yes, this is my retirement fight. So that is my inkling. Any thoughts on that from you? Do you think I'm right? But before you get into that, make sure you like and subscribe this video and tell us what you think about the matchup. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely interesting, and I didn't think about that just because from as closely as I've followed Dominic throughout his career and everything, and I've spoken to his mother for God's sake. I've done an interview with his mother, and a great story. You should check that out. That is on the Body Lock actually. It was a very good one I did a while back now. I think December, but yeah. I don't know. As for him, definitely, I don't think he would say it's his retirement. But at the same time, I think that he's such a competitive, mind and person that I don't think he would even have that thought in his head going into a fight. I think that if he is the day that he does stop fighting, I don't even know if he will ever announce. I think it might be like a Matt Hughes, Sean Strick type thing where he just kind of goes off and we're like, oh, I guess Dominic's done now. He's like 45. We would just wait years and years and he ends up not coming back because, man, the guy has always been, like, I'm going to come back during all these periods at the time that he has lost. He's like, I can still do this. He believes in himself so incredibly much. And why wouldn't he after, the comebacks that he has pulled off already? But I do like the idea or it's interesting that you present it that way in terms of Kenny, and if I don't know, if he was to win, especially, I couldn't see him. Let's go with the idea, right, that he would consider a retirement fight, even though I'm not sure that he would think about that aspect of things. Let's say he did. I don't think he would go out on a win, especially against an up and comer. But if he loses, I think that would maybe be a case where he's like, all right, well, I guess this is definitely the sign. This is definitely the sign that, yeah, I can't hang anymore. Because, you look at the losses that he does have, literally all title fights, right? He's only lost 3 times in his whole career, all title fights against the best guys. So, I mean, it's a very interesting, just the whole journey Dominick Cruz has been on, and just his legacy that he's left behind. Yeah, man. I don't know. That's something that kind of really perplexes me. So I'm not sure where to take it too much, but it's something to think about. Definitely with he doesn't need to fight anymore as much as we still want to see him fight. I wish that they would have made the Aldo fight. I hope that we can still see that because that is the WEC super fight. Man, I've been wanting that one for probably since the WEC days. So I mean. I want that before he goes. Give me that at least, Dominic. UFC, actually, you guys make it happen because you very well could.
Yeah, no, I mean, right. That's a great point. Is if, yeah, and that's a very good point about his competitiveness as well. I could easily see, especially if he's able to breeze through Kenny, him saying, "No, I want to get back in there." But I do love. I mean, now that you mentioned it, I do love the idea that if Aldo gets past Vera and he gets past Kenny, then you've got Cruz and Aldo just begging to be made. That'd be a great matchup. So yeah, please UFC, even or if they both lose, just book it. Just
main event still. I need 5 rounds.
yeah, you got it. Just it doesn't matter if it's a fight night or what have you. Like just come on, main event. I agree with all that. And yeah, it's one of those things where I know the UFC likes active champions, and that's especially now more than ever where they're putting on so many shows a year. That's something that's got to play into if Cruz were to get another title shot, if he's going to make another run. I'm not sure the UFC, if his body can't hold up, he's only getting older. It's one of those things where we'll see. We'll have to see what happens. In terms of the matchup itself, Kenny versus Cruz, who do you favor here? Because for me, on paper, I mean, I like Casey Kenney a lot, but on paper, unless Dominic's really just fallen off, I think he's able to kind of get this done, no problem.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, I will never bet against Dominic. I'll never bet against this man. He's proved everybody wrong so many times now, except for this last time, unfortunately. But, Henry Cejudo doesn't get enough love either. So I will say that he is incredibly underappreciated for the character that he puts on. And just to mention, the injury stuff too, of course, with Dominic, which you kind of have to. I don't think that he had any issue this time between, Cejudo to Kenny now. So I think it was just kind of a matter of figuring out his next step after, this loss where it's like, well, dang, now I lost, but I don't have an injury either. So it's like something totally new to him and just figuring out what does he want to do next? When does he want to do it? What does the UFC want to give him? Like, I would love to know what went into the process of the making of this fight and how many other things may have been presented to him. Because I can't imagine that this was the only thing. It very well could have been just like, hey, Casey Kenney, what do you think, Dom? He's like, okay, yeah, I'm a company man of sorts. I would say he's probably a company man. They've been great to him, and he's done all he can to give back to them too, obviously. So, in terms of that, yeah, I don't think injury related. But yeah, as for the matchup though, I mean, yeah, it's really hard to go with Kenny just because all things considered, of course, the momentum is on his side, the youth is on his side, the frequency of activity and all that. But in terms of the experience, the level of competition, I mean, overall skill set, Dominick Cruz, man, I mean, it doesn't get that much better than this guy. And just, of course, one of the most unique and puzzling fighters to have ever graced the sport. And only two people essentially have been able to figure him out in any facet. So if Casey Kenney can do that, I don't know. I mean, I think he's definitely a very good prospect and can rise through the ranks. And one of the reasons that bantamweight is definitely so good and deep as it is right now. But man, if you just look at, like, we can only look at the losses that Dominic has had recently and think if Kenny can replicate those type of performances that Cejudo and Garbrandt were able to put on. I just don't see it because those were rare performances and rare types of athletes like Cejudo, for example. Like, I think he can definitely have success in some areas, but Dominick Cruz has been consistent in the cage when he's performing. Of course, the inactivity has been an issue, but in terms of showing up, that guy always shows up better than average. Let's put it that way. So, I mean, Kenny's going to have to come on his A game. And I mean, you got to think for him too, he's going to be in a position where, the pressure will be on him to perform. I mean, of course it will be for Dominic too, but I think he won't feel that as much because the moment is a lot bigger for Kenny. Like, facing this guy, his first former champion that he's fought, the best the division's ever seen, one of the best of all time. I mean, so if he can even, just mentally come in there and show off the skills that he has, it's going to be quite a task. Yeah, I think that we could see a vintage Dominick Cruz performance here. I would love to see a Takeya Mizugaki kind of come back, but don't know about that because Kenny is definitely very tough and durable, as we saw in the Nathaniel Wood fight, which was very good. And I mean, I guess I could see the fight looking a little bit like that, except tone the volume down a bit because Dom is not going to be as wild as Kenny is. That's the thing. It's like he's not going to give him these opportunities or be there to be hit like a Haley Olatong with those body kicks. So I think the mobility, like it has done for many in the past against Dominick Cruz, is going to be the biggest hurdle for Kenny to overcome here. And then Dominic is no slouch in the wrestling either. It's going to be a tough time for Kenny, I think. He'll have to try his best to replicate the Cejudo performance, which that's not easy either.
Yeah, no, I mean, if Cruz steps into the octagon, like we've seen Cruz step into the octagon countless times before, Kenny's going to have to put on the best performance of his career, and it's going to have to be at a much higher level than even, as you said, against the Wood fight. Like, I mean, that was a great fight, but in terms of just the wildness, I think if he fights like that, I think Cruz picks him apart. And unless Cruz's footwork has just evaporated, then I think it's kind of an easy day at the office for him. So great opportunity for Kenny. Huge risk for Cruz if he's trying to make his way back up the ranks, because should he lose, that is a massive setback. And, even a win over Kenny is great, but it doesn't, propel you into a top, 5 fight necessarily. His name could carry him.
Yeah, I think that because it's him, it goes go farther, than it would for somebody else. Like, let's say a Dvalishvili, if they were to rematch or something. But, we saw Faber. This is, I guess, the closest comparison you can make is we saw Faber come back and get launched right to a Peter Yan fight. So, yes. I mean, something similar, I guess.
Yeah, it very well could happen. Again, make sure you like and subscribe. Let us know how you think this fight is going to go. Who you got? You got Cruz, you got Kenny. Tell us why. We'll get back to you. And any final thoughts, Drake?
UFC 259, March 6th. That's a ways away. we don't only have to worry about Dominick Cruz injuries. We also have to worry about a goddamn virus, which is taking out everybody these days. Literally losing multiple fights a week on cards. It's nearly impossible to get excited as it was, when this thing started. So that is very upsetting. Just to have to worry about that. But maybe it'll be in Fight Island, which seems to be like they're controlling things better there because it's an actual bubble of sorts, unlike this Vegas nonsense. So yeah, the fight is far away, so that's something worth note. I think.
Yeah, no, I think there's probably if you put down odds of will this fight actually take place on March 30th, I think the favorite is probably a no at this point, given Cruz's injury woes and the virus just taking everything out. We'll see. Hopefully, come late March, we've got some vaccinations rolling out. We're in a much better position. But yeah, at this point, who knows if this fight will even happen? Still, let's hope for the best. Let's hope we get a great fight between Cruz and Kenney.